Hello, Meoni here, and this video is my reaction to something that simply didn't occur to me at all until I read about it today, that Final Fantasy VIII is over 20 years old as of today, marking its 20th anniversary of it releasing in Japan on this day, the 11th of February back in 1999. And what an incredible thing to learn. Final Fantasy VIII came out when I was just 10 years old. I'm 30 as of January the 18th, and I have to say 20 years ago I was a completely different person. Addicted to Pokemon cards in the playground, playing hand-me-down video game consoles at home and getting addicted to everything from cannon fodder on the Jaguar to Super Mario Kart on the Super Nintendo at the same time. But my first ever console that I owned myself, that was my own and not a hand-me-down but was bought for me one Christmas, was the original PlayStation, and it fills my heart with joy just thinking about it. The world of gaming I had been thrown into thus far was nothing but compared to what I was about to experience, and with games printed on CD-ROMs, my mind was blown. My first Final Fantasy experience was actually Secret of Mana on the Super Nintendo, but on the PlayStation it was 7, which I loved to death. But shortly after that, with 8, it was a whole different experience. The mechanical influences and fantasy mixed with super modern ideas of transportation, politics, and how magic could be essentially explained through realistic means made me fall in love with 8. The combat in 8 was something that surprised me, having to draw magic from draw points out in the open world instead of just having limitless amounts of a spell, and just needing to restore mana felt immediately tedious at the time, until I realised the gameplay benefited immensely from the extra planning, and organising your every move around those limitations was quite fun. The junctioning system was elaborate and reminded me of 7's materia system, but made the inner nerd in me just gush with the possibilities and got me staring at that screen for many hours just thinking of possibilities. The whole combat situation felt like not a step backwards, but more of a sideways step for me in the series personally. The game had a wonderful storyline and delivery I had at that age now begun to adore from the series as a rule of thumb, but added a whole other side to the depth of combat, and that's something I think that Final Fantasy VIII will always be remembered for, either negatively by people who saw junctioning as a tacked on element, or glorified by those of us who got a real kick out of using it. It's incredible to think that these features and elements that made Final Fantasy more creative are still the driving force behind content in Final Fantasy XIV, the game I absolutely love and support today. Experimentation is something that quite a few developers at the time didn't explore quite as radically as Squaresoft, for fear of the publisher's hand, but Square was reckless and took chances on their work to receive the results they got. It always felt like when a new Final Fantasy game was announced to be released, you had to clench your teeth, as whatever was about to be announced was bound to rile up some journalist somewhere in the world, or add a spin to the usual formula that would leave onlookers open-mouthed at events like E3. This is something they continue to do even up to and including the Enix addition to their name.
I am proud to announce that by popular demand, we have a very special treat for everyone.
And I don't think they've ever been afraid of doing something new as a company, which is rare to say. What I see as an issue after Final Fantasy IX and X in many respects is the lack of a visitable open world. This is primarily why many people, as one of the many reasons they give, see Final Fantasy VIII and the numbered titles around this time to be indicative of a Final Fantasy golden age. It was a time when the worlds themselves did all of the storytelling. Exploration was rewarded on a grand scale, using submarines, airships, trains and spaceships in this game to reach new areas. It was a time when you could look at a map, not be given any direction or hand-holding, and just simply explore, finding secret bosses and dungeons that would immediately hand your asses to you as soon as you wandered inside. These were the games that force you to save every few minutes because you never knew what was just around the corner, and that's the reason 8 sticks in my mind specifically. This was also the age of full motion video cutscenes, or FMVs, something which in itself just has this wondrous charm to it. The dancing scene with Rinoa and Squall, for example, in the ballroom, the Gunblade intro with Cypher, the lapping of the waves of the shoreline, and the text coming up there. The whole thing mixes with the insanely good track list and makes Final Fantasy VIII a pure classic. When it was announced finally that Final Fantasy XIV was to be getting the Gunbreaker class at FanFest Paris, and that they decided to directly mimic the art style of Final Fantasy VIII's Gunblades as opposed to those in the Garlean Empire in storyline, it made me think of the possibilities. I remember doing the limit breaks with Squall for the first time, pulling the trigger on my controller to the indicator on screen to do insane extra damage, feeling Squall's hits with the DualShock controller each time shaking. It was a very special time, and I really hope they nail that when they actually bring Gunblades into 14 specifically. Final Fantasy VIII could be remembered by people in different lights, and many prefer 7 to 8 or whatever you feel, but without these special games making the series what it was, we wouldn't have crazy iterations in 14 like we do today. An MMO that defies the usual constraints of MMO logic, throws away to pre-conceptualize what is good or bad for an MMO, and makes just a really fun experience with plenty of challenge, which is really hard to match with other MMOs on the market. The direction Naoki Yoshida has taken 14 in the remake of A Realm Reborn and so on, I'd like to think would only be possible for the risks that Square Enix themselves took. For as long as you stray from the stagnant and strive to try new things, I don't think you can really go wrong. 8 was a fantastic experience, and if you've never had the chance to play it, I would highly recommend it. You'll probably hate it or love it, but the spark that sets these games apart from other series out at the time is clearly present, and you have to experience it firsthand. Either way, I'm looking forward to Gunbreaker in Final Fantasy XIV in Shadowbringers this July. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all next time.